We now have Professor Shinji Sawada. He's a professor at the National Defense Academy of Japan. He will reflect on the international law for deepening democracy. We really appreciate his contribution and his effort to come into Peru all the way from the home. Thank you so much. Please, the floor is yours.
Estimados participantes en esta mesa redonda plenaria, encantado de conocerlos. Muy buenos días. En primer lugar, quisiera agradecerles la invitación al tercer Congreso Mundial de la Sociedad de Derecho Internacional. También quisiera agradecer a la Sociedad Peruana de Derecho Internacional por haber organizado la mesa redonda plenaria, Derecho Internacional, Democracia y Gobernabilidad. Voy a cambiar a inglés. Sorry. In general, international law does not require any particular political system or ideology, whether domestically democratic or authoritarian. In addition, international law has prohibited interference in the internal affairs of other states. However, since the 1990s, there has been an increase in the number of claims that global governance and international law should reflect democratic values. As a reaction to this trend, in recent years, authoritarian states have been increased on the rise. Today, I would like to consider global attempts by the United Nations and efforts by regional organizations to address international law and democracy. In recent years, we have seen the terms of authoritarian state or autocratic states as the opposite meaning of democratic states. Freedom House and The Economist publish annual surveys on freedom and democracy, authoritarianism in the world. Freedom House and The Economist, another institute, the Varieties of Democracy Institute, VDEM, is an independent Swedish research institute that has recently received a lot of attention. In its annual report published this month, VDEM summarized that the level of democracy in the world in last year has returned to 1987 levels. Year 1987, under the Cold War. Regionally, Asia Pacific is at the 1978 level, and Latin America at the end of the 1980s. In sorry. I'm sorry, a little bit mistake. Therefore, first, let's consider this problem historically, especially UN efforts. There are several levels. No problem. Okay, here. There are several official UN documents from the Cold War era that are considered the basis for UN's promotion of democracy. While the words of election and suffrage appear in the documents, but the word of democracy does not appear once. The Cold War era did not create the momentum for the UN to take positive action. So only suffrage and voting on the election, but no, there is no word of democracy. And it was not until the 1990s, after the end of Cold War, that the expression democracy began to be used in official UN documents. Two approaches to democracy by the United Nations appeared after the era of Cold War. The first approach as a creator of new international norm. The second is approach as a promoter of democratic governance. With the end of the Cold War, the United Nations political role in resolving regional conflicts became more active. In Namibia, Cambodia, El Salvador, and Mozambique, the United Nations contributed to the building of new democracies through election implementation and monitoring, constitution making, and judicial and police reform. Sorry, this one. With high regard for UN activities, Secretary General Boutros Ghali attempted to publish an agenda for democracy. However, opposition from some countries forced him to change the title to Agenda for Democratization. Boutros Ghali's argument was that sustainable development presupposes active political participation of citizens or democracy. In response to this, criticism from developing countries that development comes first before democracy. Then the term of democratization was chosen to mean that the will of the people should be well reflected. Secretary General Boutros Ghali's attempt unfortunately failed because the UN is composed of diversely political-oriented membership. Conflicts between two groups, pro-democracy and anti-democracy, were invisible in the 90s, but intensified in the 21st century as the number of authoritarian states increases. Since 2000, the United Nations has moved to promoter approach. This approach aims to promote democracy through freedom of political choice, protection of human rights, rule of law, strengthening accountability, election monitoring, and capacity building. This approach is realistic but requires long-term financial support and sustainable interest of member states. Disappeared. Millennium Declaration, adopted by United Nations General Assembly in 2000, was the first UN consensus document to include a section on human rights, democracy, and good governance. However, in the MDGs, Millennium Development Goals adopted at the same time, there were no specific actions. While World Summit Outcome Document 2005 finally translated Millennium Declaration into concrete action. For example, United Nations Democracy Fund was created in order to subsidize civil society organizations around the world. Today, however, promoter approach also fell into stagnation. Economic growth in authoritarian states has diffused the view that democracy is unnecessary for development. Democracy-supporting countries are now on the defensive, trying to protect the democratic achievement of the 1990s. Not much time left, but I will turn next to regional efforts to protect democracy. After the Cold War, in each region of the world, democratic clause was established in treaties, protocols, or in other instruments of regional integration organizations in order to provide a regional defense of democracy. Democratic clause is a clause that suspends concerned countries' membership in a regional organization if democracy is suspended in an unconstitutional procedure in member country. The Treaty of European Union, Article 7, and the Charter of the OAS, modified in 1992, Article 9 of the Article 9 contain provisions on democracy. Notably, the democracy clause is also set up by regional integration organizations in the so-called Global South, contributing to the defense and maintenance of democracy in the region. For example, Mercosur, soon after its establishment, Mercosur introduced the democracy clause by adopting the Ushuaia Protocol in the wake of the Paraguayan coup d'etat uprising. Subsequently, the democracy clause was invoked in the wake of President Lugo's dismissal and is still being invoked next against Venezuela. The democracy clause in Mercosur was originally introduced in anticipation of another military coup, but it has been invoked in a different situation than envisioned. And African Union also adopted a democratic clause, but I will not discuss the African Union due to time considerations. Next. ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asia is very interesting case study. This is because the Association of Southeast Asia has traditionally strictly maintained the principle of non-interference. The democracy clause in Southeast Asia does not include the measure of suspension of membership. However, During the summit talk, Myanmar military junta has been skipped the turn of the rotating chairperson rotation. Myanmar was skipped. The adoption of such a measure by ASEAN, which is conservative with respect to national sovereignty, is a milestone. As a conclusion, democracy and democratization is always said to be from above or from below. There are limits to global activities such as the United Nations, which is required to be neutral and impartial. It can be lessons from the wisdom of regional organizations should recognize importance of from the side or horizontal dimension. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Shinji Sawada, for sharing with us this overview of how the notion of democracy has been evolving in the international scenario, and particularly within international law and international organizations.